2 years after John Lennon and Yoko Ono arrived in New York, John was, with his wife's enthusiastic support, sleeping with another woman, May Pang.
I started crying. I mean, I just didn't know what happened. I really didn't know what happened. You know, waking up, you know, you're a 22-year-old girl, you know, and you're going, I just made love with John Lennon. And when I went in, Yoko had this smile on her face, and she says, oh, I see you got together with him last night. And I couldn't say anything. She says, oh, good, 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 good. And John later came in and he said to me, he says, she could smell your fragrance on my body.
It's not clear what Yoko's intentions were when she encouraged John's infidelity. But almost immediately, John and May Pang set off to live together in Los Angeles. At this time, John had not seen his 10-year-old son, Julian, for 3 years.
Julian actually had been calling, and now that John and I were together, you know, and we knew that he was going to have to see John, and it had been 3 years already. So we arranged him. We were out in Los Angeles, and for Julian to come to town to see his father. And it was great because it worked, and it was good for John. He was nervous as anything. I mean, he also hadn't seen Cynthia for a while, but it was Julian he was mainly concerned with.
And all of a sudden there's ex-wife and son coming over to see him, and it freaked him, truly freaked him. But it was lovely. It was a good situation, because that broke the mold, because from that moment, you know, when we came back again, there was a contact. Telephone, gifts, cards, postcards.
They were learning. It was a beginning, and I said, let's not take what happened to you and take it on to the next generation. And he understood that, and he goes, you're right, I know. And I said, just continue, and he goes, I will.
Whatever gets you through the night.
John's enthusiasm for his new lifestyle embraced new friends and old habits, particularly a weakness for alcohol. This period has come to be known as his lost weekend.
Well, let me set the record straight. I'm tired of hearing everybody call this the lost weekend. It isn't a lost weekend. John was going out with May for almost 2 years. He was very much in love with May. And this was at a point in time where Yoko and John were having a problem in their marriage.
You know, a lot of people didn't realize that, you know, Yoko had said, oh, I want a divorce. This was like in February of 1974. And she was afraid to tell John, thinking that he was going to get very upset. And he just said he accepted it. And he came home from the meeting and he looked at me and I said, well, how was your meeting, you know? And he says, I'm going to be a single man in about 6 months. So it was like, what? You know, how did this come about? And so, of course, you start thinking, maybe there is a shot here if he's going to become a single man. And, of course, as time went on, you know, and there was one time where he got angry at Yoko because Yoko was doing something, and he just said, oh, hurry up, and if we're gonna get divorced, let's do it quick. I've had it, you know. And then about 3 months had gone by, and I just happened to bring, I said, well, what happened with the divorce, you know? And he said, oh, Yoko called and said the time wasn't right, the stars weren't right. And I'm thinking, oh, God, those bloody stars and psychics. It was just getting too much, you know, because she relied on them a lot.
After 18 months with May, quite suddenly, and almost at Yoko's command, John returned to his wife.
God only knows why he went back to Yoko. I don't know, for lack of a better term, because I can't think of a better term, almost like a brainwashing. You know, like it was like a control. She had like control over John. And she knew by pulling the strings again that she could work that magic and get him to come back, which he did. But in my head I said, is he nuts?
She had the key. She had the key of knowing what his insecurities were about. I didn't play on his insecurities. I didn't want to be his mother. I wanted to be his companion and his lover, his girlfriend, not his mother.
In fact, John's pet name for Yoko was Mother. And now, despite earlier miscarriages, Yoko did become pregnant again. On John's 35th birthday, the 9th of October 1975, she gave birth to a son by John, Sean.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful boy.
John now entered an almost hermit-like phase. He was seldom seen in public, and without the need or the urge to work, he locked himself away within their home in the Dakota building, apparently being a bread-baking house husband. Yoko managed his business interests.
When I tell him that I'm doing fine, watching shadows on the wall. Don't you miss the big time, boy, you're no longer on the ball.
A new personal assistant was hired for John. As the nephew of Sean's nanny, Fred Seaman was already almost part of the family.
He was a real media junkie, and he liked to have this constant electronic buzz going. You know, the TV would be on with the sound off or very low, and the radio would be on, and he'd be reading. He'd have his reading material strewn about. He was very knowledgeable about all kinds of subjects, scientific subjects, history, ancient history, archaeology. He liked to have his attention focused on different things at once because he had a very active mind.
More or less cut off from the rest of his friends, John Lennon confided in Fred.
He told me that he retired because he was tired of being competitive. He decided that he was not going to get back in the game. And I think part of the reason was that he felt he had an opportunity to be a better father to Sean than he had been to Julian. John, I think, was the nurturing parent from the very beginning, and there's the famous quote of Yoko turning Sean over to John when they returned to the apartment after she had given birth, and she said, well, I did my part, now it's your turn. And I believe that really happened. I didn't get the impression that he was happy. I had the feeling that he was very frustrated because he wasn't really getting much affection from Yoko. John was a man who craved physical affection because he, as a child, he'd been deprived of it.
I'm so tired.
He was very starved sexually. He talked about it. He talked about maybe renewing his relationship with May Pang, for instance.
I wonder, should I call you? But I know.
He called me out of the clear blue. And I kept saying, it was like early morning, I thought it was some crank call. You know, I go, hello, somebody, they hang up. Hello, nobody's answering me. And I thought, oh, God, what, I have some weirdo now. And it turned out, as I was getting dressed to go to work, I heard his voice. And it just like, the blood just drained right out of me. And I said, what's going on? And he says, it was me calling. I just wanted to see if there wasn't anybody that, you know, you hadn't gotten married or you had a boyfriend. I said, I was just wondering, I'd like to come on and see you. And it was weird, and I could sense there was an uneasiness with him. He came over, and I took the day off from work, and I just remember just having a conversation with him. I said, what's going on? He says, Mother's off to London on some meeting. So as soon as she left, I ran out. And he says, that's all I do is I think about you. And, you know, and it was, you know, we were laying in bed, and he says, you know, I wish I could just stay here and be like it used to be. Just wake up and go back to bed and just be right here.
But John, of course, did return to Yoko. There he managed to maintain the contact with Julian that he'd restarted while he had been with May. But he now had another child as well.
With Sean, John was very demonstrative, and he was very close and very affectionate. And I think Julian was a little hurt by that because Julian could see that John and Sean were close, and he wanted to have that same kind of closeness with John, and he couldn't have it.
One thing